Palestinian militants from the armed group Hamas launched a surprise, coordinated attack on Israel by land, sea, and air on Saturday morning. With hundreds killed, the attack is the largest and deadliest in years, and prompted an Israeli declaration of war. Here's how it unfolded. At around 6:30 a.m., the attack began with a barrage of rockets. Shortly after the first reports of rocket fire, Hamas fighters entered Israel near the Kerem Shalom crossing, an important checkpoint between Israel and Gaza. The video released by Hamas shows its fighters breaching the border fence and attacking the military base there. Around the same time, Hamas fighters also raided and captured Israel's Erez border crossing station. Targeting checkpoints like these enabled Hamas to neutralize clusters of Israeli forces and spread into nearby towns with less resistance. By 7:30 a.m., Israelis began seeing groups of Palestinian militants arriving in towns and cities. The incursion fanned out into 9 towns near the border with Gaza. In the city of Sderot, Palestinian militants clashed in the streets with Israeli police and military. By late morning, Palestinian militants began destroying sections of the border barrier. What started as a small penetration of the Israeli border became a wide-open corridor. Soon, Palestinian militants began taking hostages in towns near the border with Gaza. Many hostages were taken back to Gaza and driven through the streets. By the afternoon, at least 200 Israelis were killed and more than 1,000 injured, mainly civilians. Israeli jets launched retaliatory strikes in Gaza, killing and injuring similar numbers of Palestinians. Hamas said their attacks were only the beginning of a long war.
I don't understand anything, actually. I'm so confused about literally everything right now. Israel has police. They have the IDF. Did a bunch of people just walk in and just start, like, picking up random people and walking away? I feel like I'm watching a, ending of a RimWorld playthrough. Like, what's happening? The speculation is that most of the troops were in the West Bank doing police actions. The intelligence failure is so shocking. Yeah, I feel like, in a way, it's kind of a weird, because I feel like in a way, this is an argument against Israel's occupation of these territories, because the whole reason why Israel is supposed to occupy these territories is for security concerns and to manage the security of these regions. How do they miss this level of invasion with so many different people? I guess Israel would probably use this as an argument why they need an even tighter control, though, right? It's a very high holiday in Israel for Jewish people, and they got caught by surprise. Okay, but that's kind of dumb, right? Like, oh, let's attack on Christmas so everybody's, like, off work. Lonerbox said along the lines of Netanyahu and IDF relations are really strained at the moment, along with national holiday was really bad for them. Can you explain the conflict in simple words? No, actually, I cannot. Make sure not to read Al Jazeera. It's propaganda. I know they've got, like, the scary name, but there are different... I'm pretty sure there are, like, Al Jazeera outlets in different countries. Al Jazeera... I would put Al Jazeera as being probably a little bit... Oof, I want to be careful here. I've read Al Jazeera before. I'd put them as, like, better than Fox News. I don't think Al Jazeera is, like... but I think there are some publications... Fuck, who knows more about this? Somebody correct me wrong. I think there are some versions of Al Jazeera, some countries where the...
have a coffee on me.
It's garbage. You don't read...
Also, chat, chicken butt.
You don't read Al Jazeera. But then in other cases, like Al Jazeera, I thought is, like, almost, like, can be, like, BBC level in terms of coverage relating to certain events. But I don't remember if it was different Al Jazeera outlets or it just depends on what they're covering or not. But Al Jazeera is a Qatari state-owned Arabic language international news television network. It's based in Doha and operated by the Al Jazeera Media Network. In general, they're very good at reporting most things except for news on Qatar. We're never going to try. I'm just going to call it Qatar. Okay, get mad, stay mad. We're not doing that real pronunciation bullshit. Qatar is unironically closest to the... Yeah, if you want to say it in the widest way possible, but it'll still be kind of correct, I think Qatar is about the best way you can do it. Qatar is not it. Qatar or any other fucking thing, but I think Qatar, but I think it's like Qatar. It's some weird shit. We watched a video on it. No, but they're not like English sounds. Fuck them. Israel at war as Hamas unleashes surprise attack from Gaza. Remember, Gaza Strip, southwestern part of Israel. Look at it on a map so we have an idea of what we're talking about. Good old Israel. And then the Gaza Strip is this little, or I shouldn't say southwest. I should say southwest of like Tel Aviv, but there's our little Gaza Strip right here, okay? All right. Are we good? Hamas gunmen enter Israel in unprecedented attack. At least 100 Israelis reported dead. 740 wounded. That's insane. Hamas says it has taken a big number of Israeli captives. Israel says Hamas declares war, commits grave mistake. A barrage of rockets launched into Israel from Gaza. Yeah, these are probably just confirmed so far. Palestinian Islamist group Hamas launched the biggest attack on Israel in years on Saturday, killing dozens of people and taking hostages in a surprise assault that combined gunmen crossing into Israel with a barrage of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip. Israel said the Iran-backed group had declared war as its army confirmed fighting with militants at several Israeli towns and military bases near Gaza, and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu vowed to retaliate. Our enemy will pay a price the type of which has never known. It has never known. He said, we are in a war and we will win it. Israel's N12 News reported that at least 100 Israelis were killed. A Reuters photographer saw multiple bodies lying in streets of the southern town of Sderot? Yeah, right here. The Israeli military said it had responded with airstrikes into Gaza, where witnesses reported hearing heavy explosions and multiple dead and wounded being carried into hospitals. The Israeli military said Navy forces killed dozens of Palestinian militants trying to infiltrate Israel by sea. Sderot. A very approximate map of the situation in Israel this morning. Hamas now controls several settlements along the border. Israel is carrying out strikes on Hamas targets in the Gaza Strip. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu stated that Israel is in a state of war. Here's our Gaza Strip. These are the borders, the little dotted line, I imagine. I think it's dotted because it's like kind of a contested or unrecognized area, right? Which is the whole West Bank Gaza Strip shit. But the green past that border, I think, is the expansion of like military attacks, right? Am I correct on that? It's pronounced Sderot. Sderot. The Israeli military said it had responded with airstrikes into Gaza, where witnesses reported hearing heavy explosions. Oh, wait, saw this. Here's a question, just real quick. When somebody says airstrikes, does that always mean like air to surface, like planes? Or could an airstrike be like ground to ground, like surface to surface missile? When somebody says airstrike, does it imply that it always comes from a plane? Does that mean, or could an airstrike be like a missile launched from a thing and then that? Does anybody know? It's always air to surface? Oh, people are saying both. Either or, okay. Hamas deputy chief Saleh al-Aruri told Al Jazeera that the group was holding a big number of Israeli captives, including senior officials. He said Hamas had enough captives to make Israel free all Palestinians in its jails. I don't know I wonder what that number is. The military confirmed Israelis were being held captive in Gaza and soldiers had been killed, according to N12 and Reshet 13 news outlets. Gaza health officials said 198 Palestinians had been killed in airstrikes as bombardments hit deep into Gaza City, sending clouds of black smoke spiraling into the sky. Hamas said the attack was driven by what it said were Israel's escalated attacks on Palestinians in the West Bank, Jerusalem, and against Palestinians in Israeli prisons. This is the day of the greatest battle to end the last occupation on Earth, Hamas military commander Mohammed Deif said, announcing the start of the operation in a broadcast on Hamas media, calling on Palestinians everywhere to fight. Hamas advocates Israel's destruction. The last time Israel had a ground invasion on Gaza, they had just 2 Israeli teenage civilians. Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, because it's been a long time since I did research on that. Did Hamas actually have 2 teenage civilians, or did Israel play a little bit fast and loose with the facts on that one? I feel like I researched that a long time ago, and that felt like it was a little bit me things, yeah. Gun battles in Israeli towns. The attack marked an unprecedented infiltration into Israel by an unknown number of Hamas gunmen crossing from the Gaza Strip, and the heaviest blow for Israel in the conflict with Palestinians since the suicide bombings of the second Intifada some 2 decades ago. Let's read about this real quick, because I don't know fuck all about this. The second Intifada, also known as the Al-Aqsa Intifada, was a major Palestinian uprising against Israel. So Al-Aqsa is the big, like, I don't know why it's important, or the holy shrine bullshit ass area. But that is, wait, am I crazy? Fuck me, I don't know. Isn't it like somewhere like East Jerusalem? Or am I making this up? Like around here? Am I making this up? Oh, yeah, here. I'm sorry, Jesus. It's the Al-Aqsa Mosque. That's what that's... When you say Al-Aqsa, it's always referring to that, right?
I just got back from Israel on Tuesday and was in Jerusalem on Monday. I went through Damascus Gate and didn't feel any tensions. I got lucky. #WhiteBoySummer.
Yeah, good for you, dude. But remember, Jerusalem, contested kind of area. This part to the east, Palestinians like to be in. Al-Aqsa is the place that they... Well... Al-Aqsa is either, there's one of two stories here. It's either a place where IDF soldiers go in and randomly beat the shit out of Palestinians because they're bloodthirsty, hate Palestinians, etc. Or it's a place where Palestinians will throw rocks or Molotov cocktails at IDF soldiers and then run into the Al-Aqsa Mosque and hide because the IDF is technically not supposed to go in there. Now, obviously, different people, both sides have vastly different stories about what's actually happening. I've never been there before. I don't know what's closer to the truth or not, but yeah. Was a major Palestinian uprising against Israel. The general triggers from the unrest are speculated to have been centered on the failure of the 2000 Camp David summit, which was expected to reach a final agreement on the Israeli-Palestinian peace process in July of 2000. Outbreaks of violence began in September of 2000 after Ariel Sharon, then the Israeli opposition leader, made a provocative visit to the Al-Aqsa compound on the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The visit itself was peaceful, but, as anticipated, sparked protests and riots that Israeli police put down with rubber bullets and tear gas. High numbers of casualties were caused among civilians as well as combatants. Israeli forces engaged in gunfire, targeted killings, and tank and aerial attacks, while the Palestinians engaged in suicide bombings, gunfire, stone throwing, and rocket attacks. Palestinian suicide bombings were a prominent feature of the fighting and mainly targeted Israeli civilians, contrasting with the relatively less violent nature of the first Intifada. With a combined casualty figure for combatants and civilians, the violence is estimated to have resulted in the deaths of approximately 3,000 Palestinians and 1,000 Israelis, as well as 64 foreigners. Many consider the Sharm el-Sheikh summit of 2005 to have marked the end of the second Intifada. Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas and Israeli Prime Minister Ariel Sharon agreed that all Palestinian factions would stop all acts of violence against all Israelis everywhere, while Israel would likewise cease all of its military activity against all Palestinians everywhere. When it says Palestinian president, I believe that's always referring to the people of the West Bank, because I think the West Bank and the Gaza Strip technically have different Sharon. I think they technically have different governments. Am I right on that? I think. It's like Fatah versus Hamas or whatever. I think there's a Hamas in the West Bank, but I think it's significantly toned down compared to Hamas in the Gaza Strip. But I might be wrong on that. So that everything here is a little iffy for me. Lonerbox would know more than me. It's Ariel Sharon. They also reaffirmed their commitment to the roadmap for peace process. Sharon agreed to release 900 of the 7,500 Palestinian prisoners of Israel at the time, and further agreed to withdraw from towns in the West Bank that had been reoccupied by Israeli forces during the Second Intifada. Okay. And this happened from 2000 to 2005, is what it sounded like? Okay. Israel and Hamas fought a 10-day war in 2021. The bloodshed came a day after Israel marked the 50th anniversary of the 1973 war that brought the country to the verge of catastrophic defeat and a surprise attack by Syria and Egypt. The militant Islamic Jihad group said it had joined the attacks and was holding several Israeli soldiers captive. Hamas footage on its Telegram account showed its fighters pulling Israeli soldiers out of a tank. Israeli media reported gun battles between bands of Palestinian fighters and security forces in towns in southern Israel. Israel's police chief said there were 21 active scenes in southern Israel. In Gaza, people rushed to buy supplies in anticipation of days of conflict ahead. Some evacuated their homes and headed for shelters. UN Middle East peace envoy Tor Wennesland condemned the attacks on Israel, warning in a statement, "This is a dangerous precipice, and I appeal to all to pull back from the brink." The violence also drew criticism from Washington and other Western capitals. The United States unequivocally condemns the unprovoked attacks by Hamas terrorists against Israeli civilians. There is never any justification for terrorism, said White House National Security Council spokesperson Adrian Watson. I think we watched this earlier today.
Also, the Hamas forces are believed to have brought multiple Israeli captives back into Gaza. Do you know anything about that? What can you report at this stage? All right. Yumna, please take cover. If you are in a position to do so safely, you can explain to us what we're happening. If you are not in a position to do so safely,
Yes.
then please get to safety.
No, it's okay. This is a missile attack on
Another woman crying. Go figure. Bro, that building was like 3 blocks away, okay? What are you so worried about?
Palestine Tower, right in the middle of Gaza City.
Yumna, take a moment to breathe. Take a moment, you and your team, take a moment to breathe, okay? Just take a moment as we are looking at this picture. We are hours into this war between Gaza and Israel, and we have just witnessed live what an Israeli air raid looks like on a populated
Destiny, do you know what a knock
Gaza.
bomb is? That's what this was. Yeah, sure. When did this happen in 2021? I think Israel will either drop air flyers or they do like a hit on the roof, and then later on they come in and they blow the whole thing up. But that's supposed to give them the ability to say, hey, we're warning you that if you heard that explosion, your shit is coming down. I don't know if they do that all the time, but I think they generally try to. You have to be really careful when you talk about anything on the Israeli-Palestinian stuff, because people will accuse you of shilling or lying or believing propaganda and blah, blah, blah. But that's, yeah.
The city, what we believe is a residential building. What you're looking at right now is a live shot of Gaza City. And after Hamas launched an attack in and around the Israeli territory around the Gaza Strip, well, Israel retaliated by bombarding multiple targets in Gaza. For those of you who've been watching us the last few minutes, we're all a little bit shaken by what we've just seen.
Doesn't that warn all the terrorists to leave? Yeah, but the idea is, in an ideal world, okay? Oh, man. I keep thinking I'm going to be grumpy than I am. Okay, but I'm not grumpy, okay? I keep anticipating a bunch of dumb comments in chat. The idea is if you've identified some infrastructure there vital for the operation of a group that you're trying to hinder, by warning people in the building, they can leave. It lets you escape the idea that we're just indiscriminately killing civilians, and if civilians remain there, it's just because the quote-unquote terrorists or Hamas is keeping them in there and causing them to die. But you still manage to destroy the infrastructure without necessarily killing as many civilians. Like, they can't move all their shit out of that building in time, but they can get out and not die, basically, right? The targets aren't the individuals, just the buildings. No, they want to destroy the buildings.
Which was an air raid on a building just behind our correspondent Yumna Asayed as she was reporting. Now we're getting our team to safety. Also,
Speaking to Israel, N12 News by phone from Nir Oz, a kibbutz near Gaza. I don't know what any of those words mean. A kibbutz? Kibbutz? Near Gaza. A woman identified as Doran said militants had infiltrated her house and tried to open the bomb shelter where she was hiding. Hold on. Destiny, but Israel shouldn't respond with military force. That's the world Pisco wants. A socialist village, it's a commune farm thing. Gotcha. Did you see the images of civilians killed at bus stations? I'm seeing lots of images of lots of pretty unbelievably horrible shit. Man, that sounds... Everything I'm phrasing is so dark. Like, there's a lot of video right now of what looks like really unhinged Palestinian shit. Like, there's a lot of video and a lot of images of really unhinged like abductions of people, killings of people, throwing people into trucks, women being abducted and shit. And if we don't get similar footage coming out from the IDF, I don't know, that publicly it's going to look really bad for... I'm just thinking from a strategy point of view. Obviously, I don't want anybody to die or blah, blah, blah. Hamas parading around a killed naked female IDF soldier. Not safe for life, not safe for work. Don't open on stream. Destiny, what the f are you talking about? Palestine is literally committing a counterattack, mutual destructions. Matty Joe 0225. Can you link me the last time when Israel did something comparable to this? Shocking visuals after firing over 5,000 rockets on Israel from Gaza. The Hamas terrorists from IDF. See how a dead Israeli woman soldier is being paraded naked. Now Israel declared a state of war. Muslim nations will cry. Oh, I saw this. Another thing that I would be really careful about when it comes to Middle Eastern stuff and brown people wearing military uniforms with nondescript rifles that are speaking a language you don't understand, it is very easy for you to see videos. I will remind you of this every time there's Middle East conflict because it happens every single time Middle East video starts getting released, okay? It is very easy to see a video and say, Hamas soldiers torturing woman in the street, but it's like a 2014 video from like the Taliban in Afghanistan, or it's like a 2013 video with the is it the SFA, the Syrian Free Free Syrian Army, FSA, like the FSA fighting like Assad forces in 2013 or whatever. Just always be careful when you look at these videos, because again, we're Western, we're white, we don't know the languages, we don't know what the people look like. It's very easy to see a group of like Afghanistani soldiers and assume that like, oh, this must be Iran, and the video is like 5 years. Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I'm just saying, always be really cognizant of that. Okay. I don't know how you would verify the videos, but see how people talk about them. Oftentimes there are people in the Middle East or people that are more familiar. I think there's a subreddit that talks about actually a lot of this, that will be able to say like, actually look, that uniform right there, that's like an Iraqi soldier uniform from 2011. This is not a modern day thing, right? Just be careful, yeah. Be careful of that. Destiny. At least 198 people in the Gaza Strip have been killed and at least 1,610 wounded in Israel's retaliation. It's already worse? Well, it depends on who those 198 people are. Keep it simple, W or L Israel. Why does the response from Israel have to be proportionate? If Mexico dropped a missile on San Diego and killed nobody, should the U.S. have a proportionate response? The issue is that I'm going to use a very hyperbolic example that's not a fair comparison. It's just a comparison to show you what that question is like, okay? Imagine in the 1700s or early 1800s, whatever the fuck, imagine a black slave, hits his slave master, and the slave master decides to go outside and then whip, 10 slaves, in retaliation for that. And, people are like, okay, well, why did he whip so many people? And he only got punched once. And it's like, okay, but like the situation is clearly not a fair situation, right? The slave guy that punched the other dude is in a position where the slave master has a lot of power over the slaves. They're arguably oppressing, well, in the case of slavery, they are oppressing them. They're doing a bunch of bad things, blah, blah, blah. That's going to be the kind of the argument from the other side, that Israel doesn't have justification to attack the Gaza Strip with full military force because the Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are retaliating because of the quasi-apartheid state that they live in Israel. But Israel is going to say, well, the reason why they have them there is because of past conflicts where violence has come from these regions, and et cetera, et cetera. It's all very messy. But yeah, unfortunately, somebody has to be the bigger guy and it has to stop somewhere. Because otherwise people are kind of infinitely justified in going back and forth. Stop saying Palestinians, it's Hamas, dude, what the fuck? Okay, if Magenta 8, if I look through your logs, have you ever said Israelis or Israel? Or are you only saying IDF? I mean, like, it's a broad, you know what I'm saying, shut the fuck up.
Hello.
Hi, what's up?
Are you ready, or did you want me to come later?
Let me, can I read, let me just read this one more page, okay?
Go for it.
Okay.
We'll listen.
Gotcha. Please send help. Speaking to Israel N12 News by phone from near Oz, a kibbutz near Gaza, a woman identified as Dorn said that militants had infiltrated her house and tried to open the bomb shelter where she was hiding. They just came in. Please send help, she said. There are lots.
It never seems to not make me laugh at how much lefties hate Israel when they...
Sorry, Jesus. Let me get these. There are a lot of homes harmed. My husband is holding the door closed. They're firing rounds of bullets. Israeli Defense Minister Gallant said troops are fighting against the enemy at every location and authorized the call-up of reservists. Footage circulating on social media appeared to show clashes in city streets as well as gunmen in jeeps roaming the countryside. We were told there are terrorists inside the kibbutz. Is it kibbutz? Am I pronouncing that right? Do you know?
Kibbutz.
Kibbutz. We can hear gunfire. That's a what?
That's how it gets pronounced, like on my Arab family, but they all pronounce words kind of differently over there.
A young woman named Dvur from Biri Kibbutz told Israeli Army radio from her bomb shelter. Hamas media displayed videos of what it said were bodies of Israeli soldiers brought into Gaza by fighters and Palestinian gunmen inside Israeli homes and touring an Israeli town, and jeeps reportedly been driven in Israel by the attackers. Reuters was not immediately able to verify the footage. In Gaza, the roar of rocket launches could be heard, and residents reported armed clashes along the separation fence with Israel near the southern town of Khan Yunis, and said that they had seen significant movements of armed fighters. Palestinians in Gaza were bracing for Israel's response. We are afraid, Palestinian woman Amal Abu Daka told Reuters as she left her house in Khan Yunis. The last part. Backdrop of surging violence. The escalation comes against a backdrop of surging violence between Israel and Palestinian militants in the West Bank, which together with the Gaza Strip is part of the territories where Palestinians have long sought to establish a state. It also comes at a time of political upheaval in Israel, which has been riven by deep divisions over moves to overhaul the judiciary, and as Washington works to strike a deal that would normalize ties between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Saudi Arabia's foreign ministry called for an immediate cessation of violence between Israeli and the Palestinians, the state news agency reported. The Iran-backed Lebanese group Hezbollah said the operation was a decisive response to Israel's continued occupation and a message to those seeking normalization with Israel. An advisor to Iran's supreme leader, Ali Khamenei, congratulated Palestinian fighters for the attack. All right, what's up?
I don't know. I woke up a bit earlier than I usually do, just to my phone buzzing from Discord. The very top thing I saw was a Wik panel saying Israel's declared war. Let's do a panel on it. And I was like, okay.
Nice.
And then, fuck me, just like I go on Twitter and I'm scrolling and there's like bodies being like dragged around fucking Gaza and people celebrating and shit, and then there's like rockets going off on Gaza and there's borders being split and there's like a bulldozer ramming down the separation wall. There's like people paragliding in. They're fucking, have you seen the paragliders?
I've not seen the paragliders. Somebody said in my chat that they were paragliding in, and I almost banned the guy because I thought he was trolling. Are people actually
they're
paragliding
in over the sea, yeah.
Over the sea?
So they've gone out into it seems like they've gone out into the sea and then gone and like turned and paraglided into fucking Israel. I don't know. Yeah. There's like all kinds of, but mostly it's over the land, yeah. I think I saw one video of someone doing it over the sea. But
Jesus. Hold on, I'm sorry. Yeah, I see people are linking pictures now. Jesus Christ.
So that's completely unprecedented.
Are they like jumping off buildings in like the Gaza Strip and then arcing around, or are they like?
I really don't know. I don't know.
Gaza and Palestinians don't have an air force at all, right? They don't have any planes like that, right?
No.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
It's very likely that they're getting help to do it though, and that they've been planning it for quite a while.
From like Egypt or from like
maybe Iran, right?
Or when you say help, I'm thinking of like how are they getting these people in from funding or whatever. We know that like Iran probably almost certainly funds people in, right?
Yeah, the way that they're getting in is like bad security. I think it seems to be the case.
Gotcha.
Because that wall is pretty like they have like they're supposed to have like a system of sensors and cameras and like automatic machine guns and everything, but it does need to be maintained, and that seems to be the problem. Is that the South has been, some people are saying that the South felt like it was more or less abandoned by the lack of Israeli presence there. So but yeah, this is like on the 50th anniversary of the Yom Kippur War, where also at the end of a Jewish holiday, or over a Jewish holiday, Syria and Egypt attacked the Sinai Desert and the Golan Heights when Israel occupied that. And they got very close to the border back then. I think the Syrian president told the soldiers not to cross the border. But even when that happened, I think within 24 hours of that attack happening, there were people running around the Israeli office, caught with their pants down, talking about how this is going to be like the end of the Jewish state, and we're going to need to. And they were considering nuclear weapons, so they started lining up what were supposed to be tactical nukes. One of them was already pointed at Damascus within 24 hours, so they were pretty alarmed.
Okay. Wait, and this was in this past 50 years ago or whatever?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, point being that when Israel gets caught with their pants down, they get very fucking angry and they respond like. So the response is going to be absolutely insane to this. Like, I wonder when I feel like I've used to have debates with leftists about this. I feel like the problem with a lot of like really far left people who you're probably arguing with on Twitter with your MLK quote is that I feel like a lot of these far left people don't really know what Hamas is. I've had debates with people who think that Hamas, I feel like the general impression of far left people on Hamas is they think that Hamas is like, they say some anti-Semitic stuff. They're very religious, so people probably support them in part because they're more reliable for welfare than the other Palestinians who are more corrupt. And that they basically just fire a bunch of shitty rockets into Israel. They all get eaten up by the Iron Dome, and then it's just like gets press attention. Yeah. That's what I think most leftists think Hamas is. I really hope that there are some maybe like more good faith people who actually see what Hamas really is, that they kind of see all what's happening and they're like, okay, yeah, maybe that'll happen. I don't know.
Yeah, that's never happening. Nobody is good fit. This Israel and Palestine, like the people outside that observe this issue are more ideologically driven than Hamas or Israel themselves. Like, yeah, people have a very, very one-dimensional view of this. That's why, like, the whole goal right now is to go into Twitter and see, like, are you going to blame Palestine or are you going to blame Israel? And like, then you fight over that, and that's basically it. Yeah.
It's all the news outlets as well. So like Al Jazeera is constantly updating all the deaths in Gaza right now, and they're showing a story of ambulance in Gaza that got struck by the Air Force.
I saw that.
And then everywhere else, like the other press, it'll be like, or Times of Israel, it's all the Jewish deaths. So yeah, it's all like yeah. But I wonder. I think I didn't expect this to happen. This is like really, really surprising.
Well, yeah, apparently Israel didn't either. Yeah.
I don't think it's that surprising that something was going to happen, though, because of all those tensions between Netanyahu and the non-right-wing Israelis. It has bled into the army quite a lot. There were reports a few months ago of IDF soldiers refusing to turn up for duty. Some people, just them struggling in general with not enough people joining. Because of the judicial reforms and because they just didn't feel like they were getting properly represented. There's also been that side by side with the issue that the demographics in Israel are becoming a lot more Orthodox Jewish proportionately, and Orthodox Jews tend not to fight. So they're struggling to get recruits on those two ends. And Hamas knew that. Hezbollah were even publicly saying that this is going to be a really big opportunity because the IDF is kind of like weakening.
Doesn't this kind of like, I could be wrong, and I don't really understand how they respond to terror or strife like this, but like, doesn't stuff like this just help him shore up power, Netanyahu? Like, doesn't this kind of justify like Israel taking a harder stance on Palestinians and everything?
So that's the one option, which is more obvious. It's not that simple for Netanyahu because they're also blaming him for what's happened to the IDF for the lack of response in the South. I think
well, but then if you're saying that they blame him for the lack of IDF response, does that mean that there's like a potential that something like this happens, Netanyahu gets tossed, and somebody even more extreme comes in?
Yeah. Well, they're not going to push to the left. Okay, yeah. So that's a problem as well. Yeah. So Yeah, what he could spin it in his favor, maybe. It's not likely though. This is like this is like one of the biggest like Israeli military L's since Lebanon, actually, 2006. It might be because of the normalized relations with Saudi. Some people are saying that that Hamas wants to push Saudi away from Israel. Like maybe Israel responds so disproportionately that Saudis won't want, like the Saudi government won't want to normalize with Israel. That's
Have you
one
read?
reason, potentially.
I have I've got an article that I didn't get to read yet, but it's from Al Jazeera. It says, while the Palestinian group Hamas launched an attack on Israel, all to know. Have you read this yet, or?
No.
Gotcha. Okay. Keep talking.
I tend not to read Al Jazeera for this. I try to avoid the more partisan ones because they're very partisan on Israel Palestine.
I feel like for factual reporting, as long as you're away from punditry, I feel like Al Jazeera generally does an okay job. But I might be wrong.
Yeah, they are factual. Yeah. So here's a problem I run into, and I've been having it with my chat like all day. I feel like I don't need to explain to anyone with an IQ higher than their fucking shoe size that I don't support Hamas or whatever the fuck, or like I have no sympathy whatsoever for what they do. But the problem is that like when you see people, in some ways worse than others, trying to explain the fact that like, you know, Palestinians, even though Hamas are popular, it's like, okay, why is that? Like Palestinians don't just roll out of the womb denying the Holocaust and wanting all the Israelis to die, right? That's like, that happens over a very long period of like time and frustration and humiliation and lack of human rights, lack of resources, getting water deprived and blockades, all that shit.
I understand.
I mean, life in Gaza is fucking horrible.
I understand what you're saying, although I will say, and we kind of had this discussion last time, that there is a complicating factor here in that there is a lot of external pressure that drives people in different directions as well. Like, for instance, I don't know if I can say this, but like, if we were to talk about a solution for Israel-Palestine, I think we'll both agree on this. The solution for Israel-Palestine would look significantly different if those were the only two countries on the planet, right? If you didn't have so many external threats to Israel as well, right? Like can Hamas do this without like the IRGC? Can Hamas do this without foreign support? Yeah, so I think that I understand what you're saying, that Israel treatment of Palestinians definitely moves them in a certain direction. That should be undeniable. But there's also other people, I think, that have, like, yeah, I'm curious what you think about this. If Palestine and Israel were to actually reach an agreement where some settlements in the West Bank are taken back, there is 100% peace between these two people, there's some two-state solution or some shit, do you think, and then some like shared a security agreement, do you think that countries like Iran would be okay with that?
Probably not, no. I think they would probably still, even with less support, I'd imagine, they would probably still support groups who were militant, right?
Yeah.
Or like terrorists and all that. Yeah, that's true. Yeah. So I see everything you're saying as well. Like I get all that, which is why it's a bit, it's not quite like the same as Language of the Unheard because there are big international forces involved as well. It's just that, yeah, but at the end of the day, even if you factor that in, it's like when Hamas were founded in the late 80s, I think they had support from about 3% of Palestinians, like very few people.
Well, wait,
in the 90s,
also, I want to be really clear too. I think it's, when we're talking about these types of military conflicts, I think it's appropriate to talk about the Gaza Strip and the West Bank somewhat separately, right? Because like Hamas and the support and the extremism that comes kind of from the Gaza Strip, I don't think is as generally shared by people in the West Bank, even though the West Bank arguably has more of a right to be upset. But I do think that the extremism on those sides is quite different, right? Like generally when there's like crazy attacks and stuff happening, usually it's out of the Gaza Strip, right? That's my understanding.
Usually, but I would say it's the other way around. I'd say people in Gaza, people who live in Gaza, have more of a right to be upset than in the West Bank because their situation is just worse in every way.
Okay, all right, that's fair.
Yeah, Gaza's like a literal ghetto. Yeah, it's
Okay, sure.
But with the West Bank, there is like one of Hamas's calls is they want a bunch of Arab countries to join them in, right? They want Hezbollah to join in, they want fucking Morocco to join in as well, and also they want people in the West Bank to join in. So there's been fighting all over the West Bank as well, and there are factions that are kind of like. There are some varying levels of militancy, but also fundamentalist groups there as well. Like you have Lion's Den and groups like that. So
Gotcha. Okay.
yeah. But yeah, the point I was making was that like, yeah, Hamas gets founded in like 87 and they have like 3% of Palestinians roughly supporting them. And then in the 90s, they get clapped by pro-negotiation people like Arafat and Fatah. And then after all that collapses and the Gaza pullout, then they become the big force. And then the problem is that once they're in, they get to launch a lot of aggression towards Israel, and then Israel fires back, and then that just more Palestinians die, and then more Palestinians get radicalized, and then so they kind of like feed themselves, and they all feed into each other with that kind of thing. So yeah, I don't know. But yeah, it's really blackpilling. I don't really think there's a way out of it now. Like I've felt that for a good while, but
Can I
don't know.
can I read real quick a statement from Saudi Arabia? The Kingdom of Saudi Arabia is closely following the developments of the unprecedented situation between a number of Palestinian factions and the Israeli occupation forces, which has resulted in a high level of violence on several fronts there. It's kind of funny to call it unprecedented, right? But
This is unprecedented.
what do you mean by unprecedented?
The way that they've just penetrated through the border
Oh, sure. Okay,
and
sure.
pushed into Israeli towns. That's crazy. Yeah.
Sure. I was just reading a little bit about the second and the first infiltrata. What are they called?
Intifada.
Intifada, yeah. So it seems like fighting has existed obviously between these people for a while. But sure, yeah, the way that they've done it, I guess, is a bit unprecedented. But the kingdom calls for an immediate halt to the escalation between the two sides, the protection of civilians, and restraint. The kingdom recalls its repeated warnings, the dangers of the explosion, the situation as a result of the continued occupation, the deprivation of the Palestinian people of their legitimate rights, and the repetition of systematic provocations against its sanctities. The kingdom renews the call, the international community, to assume its responsibilities and activate a credible peace process that leads to the two-state solution to achieve security and peace in the region and protect civilians. Somebody said in 2014 there were 4,000 rockets fired in the whole war. And early this morning, they fired 2,000 rockets in a single barrage.
I think Palestinians have already fired more rockets than they did in one of the entire Gaza wars, and that was 10 hours in. So, yeah, they're coming in strong. It's funny, the Saudi statement is actually very similar to what Corbyn said on Twitter.
Was it?
And he's getting rolled over the fire for it. Yeah, I can find you what he said. So he said, the unfolding events in Israel and Palestine are deeply alarming. We need an immediate ceasefire and urgent de-escalation, and we need a route out of this tragic cycle of violence. Ending the occupation is the only means of achieving a just and lasting peace. I don't know, though. The problem is, like, like any conviction that Israel has with occupation is only going to be worse now. So
Yeah. Jesus. Let me run and grab a drink real quick. Give me 17 seconds.
Whoa. Hey, Lycan.
Hey, Loner, how you doing, buddy?
I'm on pure adrenaline.
Dude, what a fucking... Nah, that's insensitive to say. Just, Twitter's gonna be really annoying for the next couple weeks.
I'm not tweeting. F that. What a horrible idea. I was gonna be in Lebanon around this time.
Oh yeah, were you
I know
one
Lebanon's
of the
not.
Secret Soldiers? Have you been practicing your paragliding or whatever?
Listen, like, just have a thing for tunnels. Like, yeah, like so. I don't know if Hezbollah's going to get involved. I know that they've been spotted around the blue line, but I don't know. Shit. Like, they were just firing a few rockets earlier in the year, but I don't know what their involvement is with this. Apparently the Taliban wants to get involved too. August is saying that in your chat. I didn't know that.
Wait, the Taliban is going to get involved where?
In Israel? I don't know. Yeah, because Hamas have called for everyone in the Arab world to get involved, haven't they?
When you think of like, I have no idea. When you think of like Taliban, I guess everybody hates Jews, so my assumptions are all against Israel. Yeah.
Yeah, the whole Middle East. Yeah.
Has the Gulf like chilled a bit on Israel, or do those countries all still hate Israel as well?
Well, Saudi is. Saudi count as the Gulf? I think it does.
Yeah, right.
Arabian
that
Peninsula.
whole area, right?
Yeah. So Saudi is like the big one more recently that have been more close to normalizing with Israel. The Emirates already has in 2020. They normalized relations with Israel, and that was also. Hamas got very, very angry with that. They actually the UAE became the first country in the Middle East to have a Holocaust education program by the state.
Cute.
I know, right? Cute. I don't know, though. The real problem is that, yeah, separating the West Bank from Gaza. Oh, Qatar did it as well, yeah. But because the leader in the West Bank is just, he's so despised. He's very corrupt. I think he's worth more than Netanyahu is. He's like a multi-millionaire, very, very ineffective.
Wait, this is true in the West Bank?
Yeah, the leader of Fatah in the West Bank, yeah.
Oh, that's unfortunate. Okay.
But but the Palestinians don't really like him because they see him as like an accomplice with the occupation. Like he just helps Israeli security do its job and doesn't really push for any like advancing forward. And his whole thing is that when he was a student, he was a Holocaust denier. His doctoral thesis was on Holocaust denial, but then he tried to become like a big player on the world stage and became like reformed and like went to Auschwitz and all this shit. And he's like the representative, the internationally recognized representative of Palestinians. But more recently, because his popularity is so fucked, he's decided that his way of getting popularity back is to be anti-Semitic. So he's been pushing like weird anti-Semitic conspiracy theories and like false history about Ashkenazi Jews not originating from the Israelites, and that Hitler did what he did because of usury. Like that was his comments a few months ago. And now I think his response is just to say that Palestinians have a right to defend themselves. That's all he's saying.
Is there a chance to overwhelm the Iron Dome? Like, is there ever a chance that that there's actually more rocketry in like the Gaza Strip than like there are missiles to counter it in Israel? Like, could that happen? Like, would they just run out of it and then all of a sudden like Tel Aviv and shit is getting leveled?
That's kind of, yeah, like that's why rockets get through, isn't it? It's because they fire so many that.
Well, I'm not saying that like they fire so many at once. I'm saying that like theoretically after 5,000 shells, the Iron Dome is actually like out of ammo, and now like if you fire one rocket, like you're rocketing in or something. Does that make sense? What I'm saying? It must be, right? Because I don't know because it might be that like the Iron Dome ammo is incredibly cost efficient and they've got like 50,000 shells. I have no idea.
Yeah, I have no idea either. But
I see.
I know that typically the more they fire, the more hits, right?
Yeah. So, well, if you overwhelm at one point of attack, at least one rocket impact so far in central Israel near the city of Tel Aviv. Jeez.
Yeah. So that's worrying.
Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think? Why did you tweet the language of the unheard thing? Was that in response to someone or what?
Yeah, because obviously I just see all the lefties saying like, this is Israel. This is because Israel's oppressed the Palestinians for so long. It's like, oh, it's the riot to the language of the unheard meme.
Wait, so what was the point of learning the lesson of 9/11 if we're going to pretend that like there isn't some truth to that? So with the Taliban, or rather Al Qaeda, like we go in there and we help them liberate themselves from Russia.
Yeah, but you have to be careful because it's like, or sorry, go on.
Our other acts in the Middle East and global politics led to them forming Al Qaeda and turning towards America in the 90s. So that was just us helping them at that point, and then just some business dealings and some activities in Iran and all that shit, which we shouldn't have done. But this is coming from a country where it's like directly, and I have to say the fucking caveat, I'm not defending Hamas terrorist actions. This is about a matter-of-fact conversation of actions and consequences. Doesn't justify the consequences. Do I need to say that 1,000 times? You guys hate when people give caveats on Reddit before they say, I don't like this person, but so don't make me fucking do that. Anyway, so with all that said, it's like, do we not have the honest conversation about how support for these groups is bolstered in these countries because of actions of Israel?
It can happen, but the question is whether or not the initial actions are technically right or wrong. Like, people are very quick to say, oh, the United States created the Taliban because we supported the Mujahideen and some of those people and blah, blah, blah. But the initial question is, was it actually bad to take a side in like that Afghan Soviet war, right?
I think that was fine.
Okay, but so then that's the way, but then
around it.
From there, us picking and choosing leaders in other sides of the world for things that are really ultimately, at least in the Cold War era foreign policy, it was largely to serve only American interests with what it feels like was kind of a disregard for people in the area. It was mainly just to serve American interests. Now, you can argue in the macro that we think democracy in the long term serves blah, 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 but like that's what it was. If we're engaged in behavior like that, though, right, you can probably justify some level of foreign intervention almost anywhere, depending on what you're talking about, right? You could arguably justify Iran when we were saving the fucking the UK's oil fields or whatever from being expropriated. But that's always going to lead to downstream effects. Just because a bad downstream effect happens, I don't think that's a thing just like, oh, well, we should have never done those things, right? Does that make sense? Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying. Yeah, but I mean, if you like when you read in depth on the history of like what we did in Iran, for instance, like Iran, I can't remember how to pronounce it. When we did that, like we shouldn't have done any of that shit. Like we had no good justification. There was a lot of bad intelligence.
Hold on, when we fought the Shah or deposed that was when the Shah got kicked out of power, basically, right? Mm-hmm. Wasn't the big driver going in there that one, there was already a fuck ton of unrest. Two, there was a lot of economic instability. And then three, the current leadership, which already wasn't that popular, I thought they said that they were going to seize all of the foreign-owned and operating oil companies in their country. And the United Kingdom had, I think, one or two massive ones in that country that they didn't want getting essentially stolen by Iran. So they asked the United States to look into it, and we ended up supporting another faction there that became the one that toppled the current leadership. But like that country was already kind of like fucked. Or I'm sorry, we might have installed the Shah, not deposed. It was the leadership before.
It's Mossadegh who was deposed, yeah.
Yeah. I wish that we could see what would happen in some places if we don't intervene at all. Because it's hard to know if the situation would actually be better or actually be worse. I'm not entirely sure sometimes.
Yeah, I wish we had this chat a year ago when I read the
Sure. Like, it's very easy to say that, like, oh, we intervened here and we shouldn't have and it would have been better. But, like, maybe not. I mean, there are, like, ongoing genocides around the world where, like, you know, people look at, like, Libya as a good example where we bombed the fuck out of them and then we just moonwalked out. And it's like, oh, look at how fucking horrible that was. But there's a world where leaving Gaddafi in there, he's worse than Assad. And he just fucking goes ham on gassing people and everything, right? Maybe. It's possible. But, I mean, yeah, go ahead.
Loner, there has not been a break in conflict since Israel was established, right? Like, since the war in Israel... and what was it, I don't know if it was the Yom Kippur War or whatever. After that, the conflict has been there consistently, right? There's never been a break. There was never peace, right?
There have been ceasefires, but no peace, no.
Yeah, exactly. So this is a conflict that has resonated over decades, right? We're not too far from 100 years of this going on. And so with that, they are, like, this isn't some new thing, you know, that all echoes throughout this time. And trying to speak clearly. So you have a country of people, a group of people that feel constant oppression from those around them. And now Israel is starting to expand. They treat Arabs as second-class citizens. They finally admit they want an ethno-state. They are an ethno-religious state. Like, these are a little different than America's, you know, multitude of meddlings all throughout the Middle East, North Africa, wherever. Are you direct actions against them?
Yeah, wait. So you're being critical of Israel for like the quasi-ethno-state kind of thing?
That the expansionism, like, I don't. First, to be clear again, I support a two-state solution. I don't think there's any peace ever without a two-state solution.
Sure.
I don't think that Israel's will ever be treated properly. I think the UN would literally have to put troops for 1,000 years into Palestine if Palestine became the only state to keep peace and ensure that Jews weren't treated as second-class citizens. But
Jesus, I think that so one of the things that why is this not a longer fucking video? This is insane. Oh my god. I can't imagine like seeing this out your fucking window. I don't know. It looks like 30 or 40 rockets just like shooting into the air in the night sky.
Oh yeah.
Jesus. Hamas fired rockets at Israel. Some fell on the buildings in Tel Aviv. The issue. So obviously, I'm opposed to ethno-states. Okay. But so here's something. Here's like a back and forth. Okay. Here's a dialectic. I don't know if you call it that. It sounds fancy though. One might say. We need to give special attention to black people in the United States. And a counter-argument to that would go, I think that racism in all forms is bad. Any type of racial profiling, even if it's beneficial. And then somebody might counter and say, I think in principle, you're correct, but it's hard not to try to give some racial preference on one side when there's racial discrimination on the other. It's hard to say we ought to treat these people the same as everybody else when everybody else isn't treating those people the same because of that characteristic. So there's like that back and forth argument for the justification for having not a color blind society, but a color aware society, regardless of how you feel about that language. But when you look at Israel, it's easy as Americans, especially as Americans, to look at Israel and go, Ethno-state equals cringe. I can't believe you're giving racial preferences. We don't have those values as Americans, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. However, the problem is if you're Jewish, there are a lot of people around the world that explicitly and specifically hate you because you are a Jew. So it's hard to walk around and say like, bro, stop like being so Jewish and acting like your whole life is centered around being Jewish when other people are like, I want to kill you because you are Jewish. I think that's like that's the tension there. So I agree with you that like in principle, like an ethno-state is cringe, but if people are hunting and killing you based on your ethnicity, it kind of makes sense that you want to hide in some place with a bunch of your ethnic allies.
Is that the reason they've given Lonerbox? Like I know they say explicitly like we want this. You know, like a lot of their laws are written around being Jewish.
Pretty sure Hamas is literally like signs like death to Israel and shit, right? Like, sorry guys.
Yeah.
But
I think what you're saying, so I think that basically like security concerns and also like demographic concern is basically like a security concern, right? I feel like a lot of the action you can say is like understandable or even justified because of security concerns, but that doesn't mean like all of it is. Like there's just some things that happens that I don't think has any security justification, and I feel like it's maybe better to look at stuff like that. Like I don't see why expansion of settlements has anything to do with security,
exactly.
Right? And that makes the demographic situation actually worse. When it comes to like I don't really know why Israel controls the Palestinian water supply in the way that it does, so that the average Palestinian only gets like 70 liters, even though the UN recommended minimum is 100, right? So there are situations like that where I'm not too sure, but for demographics, I guess like if there's two states, that's not really a concern for Israelis. What were you going to move forward with that though?
Real quick on that, I'm really curious what the argument is for the expansion of settlements other than like Israel just wanting to take more territory, because it does seem to exacerbate negatively like the security concern. Like what is...
They do it because they think, I don't know. It depends on different people's explanations. Obviously, like the more religious Zionists will just say they do it because it's their land, right? They deserve it, right?
So then it's not like a security concern thing. It's literally like an expansionist, right? Like I just want to take more shit.
It's also, okay.
What?
Oh, I thought you said someone else was joining in, or I heard someone else join in.
Oh, I dragged. This guy is a Zionist gaze of Israel, wants to just take over the conversation. I just brought him in here to represent the Jewish side of things, I guess.
Hey.
Shalom.
Was he going to talk?
He's working on it. Damn, okay. There's rockets falling on his house right now. Actually, I don't know if he's in Israel or not, but... I thought Destiny had been reading about this. How does he think there's still some other justification for settlements? I don't know how you got there from anything I said, but you're permabanned. Good luck, buddy. Pretty sure I literally just said I don't see there being any good justification for settlements. I don't. Sometimes people will take things that I say and they'll quote them, and then they go to my subreddit and they'll present this idea that I literally believe in. They'll go, why doesn't Destiny believe in this? It drives me fucking crazy.
I like it when people in your chat call me Jihadi Box. That's a good one. That's a good meme.
Yeah. Why are you clicking your mouse button so many times when you talk to us? Oh, I'm usually like clicking links in chat, just seeing what's going on while I'm chatting, but...
Yeah, I don't know. When you were talking earlier about whether or not the initial act was like the right decision or not, I think that's why it's worth just like... I think there are definitely things that America and other partners of Israel and Israel themselves could have done in the past or could have not done that didn't really have that much to do with security. And I think it's maybe better to find out what those things are and like focus on that. Like, I don't really know, like when Gaza, like during the blockade, it's still happening, but like during the blockade when they were limiting food supplies into Gaza, and then like one of the politicians said that it was like the point was to put Palestinians on a diet. Like they were literally counting calories to allocate per person in Gaza, which is just kind of like, I don't really know what that has to do with security. That just sounds like, and like for farmers and like limiting how far into the ground they can dig. I don't know if the security concern there is they're going to like dig a tunnel, like a terror tunnel.
Yeah, that's probably the concern there, right?
Yeah, but I think it was like, it was either like, it was really low. It's like 3 feet of water or something. Yeah, it was a really strange policy. But I don't know, like one of the demographic policies that Israel has within Israel, I think, is that they can deny building permits based on demographic concerns. So like not allowing, so which means it's very hard for Palestinians who live in Israel to get building permits because they don't want certain parts to become like too Arab. I don't really know how if that's justified, like within a country where you're the clear majority. Yeah, that's weird. What does the new person think?
Yeah, Mr. Israel, you kept asking me in chat to drag you in here. Why don't you say anything?
Well, while we wait for him to fix the mic, I want to clarify earlier that I wasn't when I said Arabs. I always thought that people referred to it like people that were pro like getting things better for Palestinians in Israel, that they refer to them as Arabs. So just any non-Israeli. But I guess the proper way to refer to it is Palestinians in Israel, because apparently it's Israeli propaganda that to make them sound like they're all just people that don't belong there.
Exactly.
So
Yeah.
I think the more committed ones say they should be called 48 Palestinians, or Palestinians of 48. So I don't know.
Is that the pre-Israel land border shit? Or
Yeah.
Gimleo in chat, I'm not scared. It's just that, I mean, there is a lot of sensitivity here. Like, we're talking about, like, imagine us talking about the American stuff on 9/11. The only reason I think it's pertinent to talk about like, the geopolitics here is because we have the hindsight of 9/11 to really discuss like how these things come to be.
Sure. Hold on real quick. I'm sorry. Could you please explain the settlements? Isn't the land legally purchased from the previous owners? The issue with settlements is I think the entire world and Israel and Palestine kind of sort of have this agreement that there's a huge mass in the east part of Israel called the West Bank that is supposed to generally be for the Palestinian people to live in, but for some reason there's a whole bunch of Israeli people that live there or Jewish people that live there, and they're keeping their stuff, and it's like, okay, well, that's kind of weird, whatever. But then they keep taking more and more and more land, and they keep building more and more and more stuff. So the Palestinian people are in their lands, and they see Jewish settlements expanding, and they're like, why the fuck do you keep expanding these places in places where you're not even supposed to be in the first place? I think that's, like, broadly speaking, the quote-unquote problem with settlements. And Lonerbox, you can always correct me if I get something wrong.
So sometimes it's like they're trying to do ethnic cleansing by, like, basically slowly buying up houses, but then again they do some shit where this house is not up to code and needs to be demolished, etc., etc. So in general,
or like the fighting in that one neighborhood north of that wall. Fuck, what was the name of that? Sheikh Jarrah or whatever, where they're like, well, actually, we've got the older documents to this and we own it, so we're kicking you out. And like, people fight over who has the actual right to certain property and everything. Yeah.
I think that case had to go back to like Ottoman Empire documents.
Yeah, people were arguing a lot over it, and then like missing. It was really autistic. Yeah. Well, I'm sorry, I say autistic, but I mean obviously these people are fighting for their lives, or their livelihood at least.
Well, they had to be autistic to fight for their lives.
Yeah, arguably, yeah.
There's no getting around that.
Yeah, I guess you can't really use that argument if you're in court and some lawyer brings out some old case or whatever. I'm like, you're such an autistic fuck. Like, why are you citing this case? Like, but yeah. Have you heard of the term roof knock? Yeah, we talked about that earlier.
What is it?
You kind of like, you drop kind of a meme bomb on top of a building to let them know that they're about to be demolished. So it gives civilians times to leave.
Oh, yeah, they do that a lot.
They'd also call them and like send out flyers before. They don't just like start with the like shake the entire building.
Mm-hmm.
Also,
wait, did you have something? What do you want to talk about? You seem like you really wanted to come here.
You were asking about the justification for like why they want to keep building the settlements. Most of it is just for like it's mostly to appease the more far right segment of like Netanyahu's government or anyone's government, where for like religious reasons they want to continue like expanding until they have all of the quote unquote historical land.
Is that completely true though? Because like Likud have famously expanded settlements for a long time as well. So even before they were full of religious people, like Sharon was a big champion of settlements in the 80s, and there was no, like that was like a secular thing, wasn't it?
I don't know much about that. I'm mostly talking about like nowadays and the current drive to continue expanding the settlements.
Is it? Are you Israeli?
No, I have family there though.
Wait,
Okay,
are you
so-
Jewish?
Yes, I am Jewish
On both sides or just your mom's side?
on both sides.
Okay.
So, you and Lonerbox can correct me if I'm wrong here, but isn't it the case that that Israel has gone very far right and continues to do so, like on a very wide scale? Like it's not a minority; it's a very popular position and trend.
Well, yes and no. Recently, there's been huge protests from the left wing of Israelis. Obviously, this escalation is going to completely kill most of the like left wing push to chill out a little bit because people are just going to be enraged and it's just going to cause more cycles. But in like the past couple of years, people have been super tired of all this shit and the expanding settlements and the justice reform and whatnot.
If you don't mind, like expanding on, like I guess, personal viewpoints from your family side, the family that lives in Israel, how do they view the settlements and like the I assume that everyone is aware that like people are being displaced, land being taken over, constant expansion. So I guess I watched a video this morning where a family had like they were waiting for the court to file it, and they said, "No, fuck this, we're going to take the home," and they just forced their way into the home, started harassing the residents, and have just been kind of expanding their way through the apartment little by little. Someone leaves a room, they take it over, blah blah blah. So I guess my mindset is that to get to that point, you have to be like you have to have a bad viewpoint of these people. You can't just feel like, "Hey, sorry for you, but this is mine now." There's got to be something a little more negative there. So I'm curious what your family's viewpoint is when they see
I
this
mean,
happening.
my family's not really that into the whole settlement thing. They think it's kind of just causing extra problems for no reason, and they mostly just. So I hear a lot of people talk about like the 67 borders. They just kind of want to keep the current borders and everything. Like they think basically fuck around, find out for 67 and 73. So obviously any land that was taken from that is just and obviously deserved in the end state of Israel, but most of them are two-state solution Andes, or the Ben Shapiro solution of like the ethical quote unquote ethical apartheid state where it's like the Palestinians get full control over their territories and have autonomous, but it would basically become a de facto military state.
Kind of like I
Then
was
they
going to
would get,
compare
like,
it to Bantustan, but I think that's it. Doesn't matter. I was going to
Pakistan?
compare it to Bantustan, the proposed homelands in South Africa. They were going to put them all into these like small, disparate reservation lands in South Africa. That was what the white population wanted to do during apartheid.
Oh, well, I don't know about that part.
Okay, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Do
Any
you
other
feel like so wait, are you Israeli or just your family?
No, just extended family. My
Okay.
my father, his entire family was born in Israel, but then they moved to America to because of some better school or something for a deaf sibling.
Do you feel like I know that a lot of more left-leaning Israelis that I speak to, they tend to say that they don't really like what their government does. That they support Palestinian rights and everything, but they look to the English-speaking world and they look to the leftists there, and they feel completely alienated by them because they don't identify with them either. And they often get called like not real left-wing, like you're actually like they would say like even liberal Zionists are still like far right by international standards, or so they feel like they don't really have a home like politically
Yeah,
in the
a lot
English-speaking
of
world.
people,
Do you get that?
a lot of people from yes, exactly that, and a lot of people from that go from that pipeline become like less sympathetic, and they just feel like, oh shit, even more people give zero shit like about like our lives, especially when they see stuff about like the making fun of like oh desert like when like civilians are being kidnapped and tortured, and like that woman who was handled on the street that was like naked and thrown around and celebrated in a Palestinian crowd. And like when they see other people who are supposed to be part of their camp and just they quote unquote only care about like the Palestinian human rights, but they're celebrating with them about like these horrific events. It makes them just so turned off that they don't want to be like part of that wing at all.
I don't know
And
if
they
this
kind
is.
of
Oh, go ahead.
you go ahead.
I don't know if this is ubiquitous among Jews in the United States, but I have a lot of, obviously because of my politics, most of the people I end up talking to, the friends I make, they end up being, but like pretty left leaning. I don't have very many conservative people that reach out to me, but I've had a lot of people say when they go to college and shit that it's very awkward to ever bring up that they're Jewish or they can't like wear a certain jewelry or whatever, because like as soon as it happens, left-leaning people will start grilling you on Israel-Palestine, and the only correct answer you can really have in most colleges is I full like support basically Palestinians, and I think all like Jewish people in Israel are horrible, evil people, and I'm anti-Zionist, and I don't even know if Israel should exist. Like that's like the only answer you can give in colleges. I don't know if that's ubiquitous, but like every girl I've talked to that's Jewish says that when she's in college, like if her friend group or somebody finds out she's Jewish or they see like a jewelry or whatever, that line of question like always happens, and it's the only way you can answer. Otherwise, people look at you like you're insane. Yeah.
Yeah, my friend had like, so I go to a mostly Muslim college, even though it's not really that region, but my friend basically has a lot of Muslim friends and went to a like Muslim what's the word for the things in campuses,
Dorms?
whatever, a meeting basically. No, not a dorm, like a club, whatever, one of the clubs, and he went in just wearing a Star of David, and he I forget what they shouted at him, but they basically shouted "Free Palestine," I think, at him just for walking in the, God forbid, walking in with a Magen David on his necklace. Like it's actually such a like toxic environment. It just doesn't feel like comfortable at all walking around with anything like religious in a or even like Jewish like religious clothes in a even any American college. It's just so weird.
Sure. Okay.
You think?
sorry,
Oh wait, sorry. I was going to ask two things. One, there's a Palestinian American dude who from my like a video essayist I know who wants to join in this call. If you want.
Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll tell him to go into your Discord and say who it is. Okay.
Yeah, just tell him to join General Lobby and I'll drag him in.
Okay. I was also going to ask you, David, do you think there's any, do you think that the Overton window in Israel is like, do you think it's actually about the same as any other like European or Western democracy? Or do you think it is still more like a bit more right wing? Or do you have any strong opinions on that?
The government, I'm never going to deny that the government is super right wing. But like there is like, I feel like someone like Yair Lapid, of course, he's going to have to be right wing when it comes to security and like putting on a strong face. But I think policy wise, like people like him are the hope for like the future of Israeli politics. But obviously not when something like this happens. It's just going to be years of more Netanyahu or him getting ousted and Netanyahu on drugs for the next one. Netanyahu on steroids. But what was the question exactly? Sorry. Oh, the Overton window of democracy. Or yeah, I basically that's the answer to that. Yeah.
Because I feel like when I have conversations with more liberal or left-leaning Israelis, I always feel like just give you a specific example, is like one of them would say that was like justifying the Gaza border and how like if you go to it, they fire one warning shot, and if you keep moving, then they'll shoot you again, right?
Who's
and
they?
I think there was like this was just like a liberal.
No. When you said
Israeli
if you go to the wall, they'll shoot you. Are you saying the people from the Gaza Strip will shoot you, or the IDF will shoot you?
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. And they were trying to justify that, and it was like, oh, so for crossing a border, like you get shot, and then they were kind of like, you can maybe make that argument for somewhere like Gaza because of Hamas, but then they were kind of saying, but I don't know why like every country doesn't do that, you know. And that's kind of where maybe you get this position where, because of the conditions in Israel, like the Israeli Overton window just appears much more right wing than it is in the rest of the like Western or American world.
Also, I had a question for you, Lonerbox, because I feel like last time you were talking with Destiny, you were like kind of iffy on if Israel was defeated, if they would like if the ultimatum was like genocide. Why do you think it wouldn't be genocide, or did I misunderstand you when you were talking?
The ultimatum of what would be genocide?
Like basically, if the Palestinian side loses, it's like ethnic cleansing, and probably doesn't have to be like murders or genocides, but just an ethnic cleansing where.
Well, the position I was contending with was, why doesn't Israel just conquer everything, right? Like the West Bank and Gaza. And I'm like, well, Israel doesn't want to govern that many Palestinians. So they're either going to be like apartheid where they don't get voting rights, or they're just going to kick them all out, right? I feel like that would be the logical conclusion.
I guess the other one would be like the ethical ethnic cleansing. The ethical apartheid, where they get full rights to their territories to do whatever they want. They have, I guess it's not even that different from today, but it'll be a little bit better, where they have rights to be their own country and do their own thing, except they're governed over by Israel for the government. I mean, not government for the.
And I'm not like a clairvoyant, but is that the word? Whatever. I would say that, like, if that's what's happening, Palestinians never accept that. There'll be violence, and eventually that's going to escalate into, like, there'll have to be something else. And also that would probably end up with Israel becoming like a pariah state. So I just feel like a situation like that is never going to get accepted. And then the solution after that is going to be, we'll just get rid of them.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah.
I love you, David. It's been fun. We're going to talk to this guy.
Wait, the other guy's going to go crazy on the other side. This guy's a essayist for the Palestinian side.
True, he might be. Okay, but I feel like I should bring somebody in here that like lives in Israel and has like a super on the ground Israel perspective if I'm gonna have like a Palestinian guy, because there's a lot of Jews from America that want to argue, but I feel like Jews in America have sometimes a different perspective on that.
Well, he's American. Sorry.
Oh, he's American too?
He's American as well.
Well.
Yeah, so it's evened out. It's evened out.
I'll stay quiet while he talks though.
I had a period where I was muting myself. I'm kind of like disconnected from the conversation at the moment, but I think like my general comment is like, it seems like you guys are like fishing around on like what you want your position to be, right?
Well, no, right now I just ask questions because I just like to understand other perspectives. I mean, I'm pretty sure me and Lonerbox both have positions. Mine is maybe a bit softer than his in terms of I could be moved out of it, but why? What do you want to contribute?
Your position is
what?
Because I'm not necessarily sure what you want. That's my issue. That's why I had the impression that you're like kind of fishing around, you know?
It feels like, from what I've heard so far, is Israel needs to decide which territory that it needs to occupy forever to ensure its security. So, for instance, things like the Golan Heights. And then some like solid borders have to be drawn for the nation or the future nation of Palestine. We have to figure out, I guess, which one of these West Bank settlements need to be withdrawn or not. It probably can't be all of them. And then there have to be probably two separate states created in order for something going forward. It feels to me like I've never heard a good argument for a one-state solution that treats Palestinian and Israel voters equally. That seems to be an untenable situation for the Jewish people. So that's roughly my position. And then obviously,
you're roughly two-state solution.
Yeah, almost for sure, yeah.
So then I don't understand why the
two-state solution is like a...
No, I mean, why the antagonism? I don't understand.
This is like towards what?
Towards I don't know, like the position of like removing the settlements, or like more kind of broadly pushing towards like, I don't know. I do feel like you're pushing against something. I'm not.
Well, yeah, because you're hyper partisan against one side. So if I ask a question, it triggers you. But I literally earlier said that I don't know why. I don't know why Israel is expanding settlements in the West Bank. I don't know why that doesn't make sense.
Triggered by like the idea of a two-state solution. I mean, this is like China supports the two-state solution. I'm just like, I'm a little confused why I'm not getting like enough clarity from you.
Wait, what are you missing clarity on?
Like your position, basically. Like
what part of my position do you need clarity on?
Like that you even supported the two-state solution in the first place, right?
Well, I just told you. But I'm pretty sure the last time I had a huge talk with Lonerbox, I said just as much. I don't think a one-state solution works unless you deprive all the Palestinian people in Israel, the one state, of voting rights. But obviously that's not good, right?
I think, is it maybe because the last time we spoke, I had the context of that conversation one time before when it was the whole, like, why doesn't Israel just conquer everything? But it sounds like you're more two-state than you are that right now. Is that what's changed?
Or wait, did you say before I said that Israel should just conquer everything?
Yeah. Oh, I think that's maybe what
initially initially before I spoke to you, it felt like the only way this is ever going to end is if one side essentially gets decimated or destroyed, and then the people are forced to flee and go to some other place. But then it feels like, after talking to you, it feels like there could be a reasonable request made where Israel withdraws its presence almost entirely from the West Bank and just holds on to some places that it thinks represents a security concern, and then it just draws borders there. But the saying that, like, I support a two-state solution doesn't seem to really get across the whole point, because it feels like then the fight on the two-state solution is going to be, okay, well, where are the borders drawn? It feels like that's going to become like a big argument that people are going to disagree on what the borders ought to be, no?
I've seen that there's more of an issue concerning, in the past, a sticking issue is Jerusalem, mostly.
Well, sure, and I think, don't they want the Golan Heights back as well? Don't they want...
The Golan Heights is with Syria. That's a completely different country.
Well,
Palestine can't negotiate on the behalf of Syria.
Well, I mean, kind of, though, right? Like,
you think Bashar al-Assad is going to listen to Mahmoud Abbas about, like, his own claimed territory?
My guess is going to be, I could be wrong, but my guess is going to be that any permanent security arrangement or any permanent borders that are arranged between Israel and Palestine are going to have to involve the support and the approval of basically every other nation in the area, of Lebanon, of Jordan, of Syria, and even like a fucking Saudi Arabia and Iran. That'd be my guess, in Egypt, that everybody's going to have to agree on what happens. So if Israel is drawing up some permanent arrangement with Palestine and Syria sees that that's going on, like, I don't know, are they okay with them negotiating something where Syria still feels like it's not getting something that it wants? I don't know if that's the case. I mean, you can tell me, maybe they wouldn't give a fuck and they just watch them do it, they negotiate their stuff separately. But I thought that the Golan Heights was still kind of a sore spot for Syria. Is it not?
What kind of... Yeah, it's totally a sore spot for Syria, but what kind of response do you envision Syria taking if the Palestinian track moves by itself?
I don't know, how close or how united are Syria and Iran when it comes to their foreign policy initiatives in other lands?
In other lands? I mean, like, I see where you're getting at. Like, the idea that, like...
you could be totally right. It could be the fact that actually Israel and Palestine could negotiate something and fuck the other countries. But it feels like everybody here kind of works together and what they feel about Israel. So I have a hard time believing this case. But I also don't know that much about it. It could be maybe no one cares.
The Middle East is like I feel like I don't have to tell anybody there's kind of like a shadow war going on between Saudi Arabia and Iran, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever heard of the Arab Peace Initiative?
I've not. Are you talking about under Trump?
No. That was with Saudi Arabia, right?
Okay.
That was a peace initiative going for the two-state solution, where basically the Saudis were arguing that they put forward the idea that if Israel were to work towards a two-state solution and to recognize a Palestinian state, that they would work towards getting all of the Arab countries to recognize Israel. And this has been proffered, I think, 2002, 2007, and 2017.
Okay.
Right? You see how that works? This is the Saudi, like, the Palestinian, even within internally, the Palestinians aren't completely like one side Saudi, one side Iranian in like this whole like, you know, kind of war. If you look at Hamas until recently, right, only recently, when all the other states began sort of normalizing relationships with Assad, Hamas wanted to, because it's an Islamist government and Assad's government is a secular Arab nationalist government, right?
Uh-huh.
So those two types of governments, they don't usually mix. And what Hamas wanted was for what happened in Egypt, where an Islamist Muslim Brotherhood sort of arrangement comes into power. They wanted the same thing to happen in Syria during like the onset of the revolution. And obviously that didn't work. But what happened was it caused kind of friction until now, until like, you know, around the same time that other Arab countries began normalizing ties with Syria under Assad, that like now they have like a better relationship. But like there's still like an ideological difference because Assad is still a secular Arab nationalist. That's kind of like his regime type. And Hamas is still very Islamist. Like, I don't think it's guaranteed that like internally within Palestinian politics that given that they get basically like or especially like the Fatah side gets everything they want, and that they like tangibly make a lot of people's like lives better by being able to have like give people like autonomy, things like that. I don't think that in that scenario we would have like a continuous war, because like you would have support from the other kind of pillar of the Middle East, Saudi Arabia, and you know it's not like necessarily guaranteed. I mean, Iran is like a Shia power, and everyone in Palestine is like Sunni or Christian, and then there's a small bit that's like Samaritan.
Okay. I don't know enough to know if you're right or wrong on most of this. Does the Sunni Shia shit matter for Palestinians and Iranians? I thought the geopolitical stuff was more relevant to them.
Well,
Like Iran is very much invested in the destruction of Israel. Palestinians might not outwardly say we want to kill Israel unless they're the Gaza Strip and Hamas, but like I think that they would be pretty unified there. And like regardless of them being Sunni Shia, like both of them fucking hate Israel, would be okay with them going away. You know.
Right. I mean, look, it's a bit complicated because like the split in the two poles of like Palestinian society, Palestinian politics, isn't like Sunni Shia. There's like no Shia population, no real tangible Shia population in Palestine. I'm not going to say there's no Shia population.
And I mean, Hezbollah also is like really invested in, I think, providing militant assistance, and Hezbollah I think is Shia as well, right?
Yeah. Hezbollah is Shia. But, like, Hezbollah is also complicated, but like. I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole different bag of worms. The two kind of poles in like the Palestinian society is like the secular Arab nationalists, kind of represented by Abbas, and to a greater extent Arafat. And then you have the Hamas, right, which is the Sunni kind of Muslim Brotherhood-esque types. Those regime types have like historically not had like the same like when there's like a geopolitical kind of relationship of convenience. You will see like the two of them work together. Like
I feel like just drawing lines at Sunni Shia divides is I don't know if that because like for instance that like Iraq and Iran had a brutal fucking war and those are both I'm pretty sure Shia majority countries, right? Like is it?
Yeah, I'm not going to draw the line between Sunni and Shia on that issue. What I am drawing the line is that you only are going to see these two kind of political camps interact with a camp that's directly kind of like opposed to them, ideologically speaking, when there's like a geopolitical interest in there. If you remove the geopolitical interest, which is that like the kind of the pressure that the Israeli occupation puts on the populace, I just don't see like I feel like the chance of like continuous kind of Iranian support for like whatever group in the instance that like you're not like fucking over like millions of people. I just don't see it like persisting that very strongly. I just don't see it having that great of a chance. I mean, like, what could the Iranians do if like there's no real like reason? You know what I mean? Like maybe they could get like 100 people to like act up, but like that's not like I don't feel like that's not enough of a threat.
Okay.
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it.
Golan Heights, was that ever spoken about during the peace process? Like, did Golan Heights have anything to do with Oslo or even after, like,
I made a big video on this, but like the thing with the Golan Heights is like Ehud Barak, he kind of what he wanted to do was kind of separate the Syrian track and the Palestinian track, and you can obviously tell I care a bit less about like what happens with the Golan Heights, but like because he focused on the Golan Heights and he wanted to like get that kind of settled with Syria first, he spent a lot of time on Assad. Right? He wanted to like make a deal with Assad, separate them from like the Palestinians. It's a pretty like a tactic that keeps on going, which is like you make a separate peace with a different Arab state, and then you can like cut Palestinians away from their leverage. That's like why kind of like the Saudi peace deal is like a big deal, because like the Saudis are like, oh, you know what, we're not going to do the leverage thing, never mind, we're going to try to like get what we want, which is like guaranteed American military assistance. Which is, they basically said, if we can get guaranteed American military assistance, we won't really push the Palestinian issue. So, concerning the Golan Heights, that's what the Israelis wanted to do, and they couldn't do it, right? I think basically, if I could sum it up, Hafez al-Assad, he had a promise from Rabin that Ehud Barak, Rabin was a former Israeli prime minister who got assassinated, but he thought that he would be able to keep the promise on the terms of Rabin, and I don't think that Ehud Barak was willing to like move forward on like that basis, and like Assad was like, I'm not doing this with you, and then that kind of like fizzled out, and like so much like time that could have been spent on like the Palestinian track, which I felt like was much more promising, was like wasted.
Okay, Apostate Prophet, did you have anything you wanted to throw on?
Oh, hey, what's up?
Wait, also
I
real
was
quick,
just-
just as a perspective, where do you live and what is your actual ethnic background again? I don't know, or nationalist background. Or you don't have to say also if you're not comfortable. Sorry.
Mine, I'm in America.
Uh-huh.
I was born in Germany, lived in Turkey, and I'm in America. I'm of Turkish Muslim background, and
Gotcha.
I'm no longer a Muslim, so that's it.
Are you
Okay.
salty about the Arab revolt? Are you one of those Turks or no?
You mean the revolt against the Turks, or is
Yeah,
that
against the Ottoman Empire.
No, I don't give a shit about that.
All right.
Okay. What is what's your contribution? What's up?
Yes, I was listening earlier, and there was a discussion about how much of the treatment or how much of the behavior of Hamas is justified, and what kind of treatment Israel has shown over the years, over the decades,
I
and
think real
whether
quick, I think we should clarify that I don't believe anyone in this call thinks Hamas's actions are justified. Am I wrong in
No.
that?
Well,
Not ju-
there's going to
What do you
be varying levels of justification is I think what people are going to say. The disagreement is going to come on the facts of the matter related to what the Israeli treatment of people, especially in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank, it comes down to be, and there seems to be factual disagreements about that. And I don't know if I've taken the time to properly resolve those. So, for instance, people in the West who are left will argue that that Israel is engaged in worse than apartheid and horrible oppressive conditions to people in the Gaza Strip. For instance, as Lonerbox said earlier, limiting the amount of food they have, limiting how they're able to farm their land, depriving them of any sort of like actual security. They'll say that in East Jerusalem and the West Bank that IDF soldiers are ruthlessly attacking and entering that Al-Aqsa mosque to attack protesters for no reason, et cetera, et cetera. So if Israel is forcing the Palestinians to endure these types of conditions over and over again, and Israel is heavily funded by the West and has an unbelievable military, they've sold nukes in the United States, that Hamas is left with no response except for essentially terrorism. I'm not saying that that's not 100% justified, but that would be the argument. And I think there's probably a line of argumentation there, depending on what the facts of the matter are. There would be a line of argumentation that could be justified. Okay.
I just want to say one thing. So earlier, it sounded like there was a discussion surrounding, the levels of some measures that Israel took, which could be perceived as oppressive and which could somehow, justify the behavior that comes from the Gaza Strip or from Hamas.
I would say foment.
So the issue here is when we talk about the whole conflict between Israel and Palestinians, lots of people are not aware that we're talking about. In this issue specifically, we're talking about Israel and Hamas, so Israel and the Gaza Strip. We're not necessarily talking about Israel and Palestinians altogether, or Israel and Arabs altogether. Because
True, but I think like the first and second, like in Intifada, I don't know if I pronounce it.
Intifada.
Wasn't that like
Intifada.
largely West Bank fighters, or no?
yeah, but
Yes.
the issue is here is
Well,
different.
it began in Gaza. The first one began in Gaza after an Israeli jeep hit some Gazan workers. But at the time, like the Gaza Strip and the West Bank weren't like so like separated. It was easy for someone to go from Gaza to the West Bank. It wasn't an issue. There's actually like a big issue of people who are like from the Gaza Strip who now live in the West Bank and can't go back, and people who are from the West Bank who are now in the
But
Gaza.
the second infiltrata or whatever, or Intifada was
That was due to some issues concerning. Lord. So Ariel Sharon, do you know him or no?
Well, here, yeah. Well, let's let him finish. We don't need to. I was just saying, just for clarity's
problem
sake,
is-
there is like West Bank violence as well, right? Yeah.
The problem is when we talk about the things that Israel did to Hamas or to the Gaza Strip, so Israel committed back in 2005 to leaving the Gaza Strip altogether. And taking some preventive measures, removing all the settlements. It was under a rather liberal centrist government that this took place. But it did happen. So Israel went out of there, took the settlements out of there. The problem is, in Israel's imagination, as far as we know it publicly, the Palestinians would form kind of a unity and would work toward independence and toward their own state or something like that. The problem is, in the West Bank, you have the Palestinian Authority, which you could say is comparatively more peaceful compared to the Gaza Strip or Hamas.
Sure.
When Israel left the Gaza Strip, it didn't take very long for the Gaza Strip to get Hamas to power, and Hamas is an organization that also directly challenged the power of the Palestinian Authority and declared themselves the sole representatives of the Palestinian people. And the issue here is, I specifically have a problem with when you say that that there are some things that Israel shouldn't do to Hamas, and it's understandable that Hamas would react this way. The problem is Hamas is not just an organization that works toward a peace process, that works toward liberation. Hamas began from the very beginning and still continues with the sole purpose of eradicating Jews in the lands altogether, getting rid of all the entire Jewish
Sure,
population.
but you have to be really
and
careful.
establishing a pure
There's
Arab
a-
population.
two kind of factual impressions that I think are completely wrong. The first of which is concerning the Israeli disengagement from Gaza. I know that many Israelis will claim that this was done out of a sort of like, oh, this is us showing our intention, to be like peaceful, right, as like a goodwill gesture. But there's a lot of evidence from people working with the government at the time that this was just not the case. According to Sharon's top aide, Dov Weisglass, he said the disengagement is actually formaldehyde. It supplies the amount of formaldehyde that is necessary so that there will not be a political process with the Palestinians. And according to the deputy prime minister at the time, Shimon Peres, he cited demography concerns for withdrawing from Gaza. And the second issue is your kind of characterization of Hamas as Hamas is 100% an Islamist, anti-Semitic organization that has engaged in atrocities. We've seen them today, but their relationship with the PA, and this is a very important thing that I think a lot of Westerners miss, is first let's talk about claiming that they want to be the sole representative of the Palestinians is just not true. They want to get into parliament. They don't even want to run for president. In 2021, there was a scheduled election in Palestine, and the Fatah and Hamas came to an agreement. If Hamas was allowed to run it for parliament, they would not run a candidate for president, even though whatever candidate they ran for president would absolutely, destroy Mahmoud Abbas in the elections, right? So Hamas, because they wanted to, work with Fatah, right, and things like this, decided not to run a candidate for the presidency. And there's also evidence that, I think a Bush aide resigned. He actually even resigned over this. That the Fatah was planning a sort of kind of coup against the election, which Hamas democratically won. This is very important, right? We can't. When we're talking about like Hamas's its role in like Palestinian politics, if we ignore the fact that like a lot of like the appeal of Hamas is because of Fatah's failures, like you're just kind of like encouraging Fatah to keep making these same mistakes over and over and over again instead of like improving as a political.
That's fair, but isn't it true that Hamas and Fatah are officially at conflict? They're officially opponents at the moment. So,
yeah, sure. Yeah. A big reason for that, who canceled the election in 2021?
Yeah, you could say that, but the issue here is
who? Do you know who?
Was it Fatah?
No, yeah, it was Abbas. He canceled it.
Yeah. But the problem here is so we can talk endlessly about whether Hamas should be the justified or legitimate ruler of that region, or should be.
Okay, Jewish people all over there begging me to come in. Chill. You guys control the whole media according to everybody on the planet, okay? So calm down, okay? Let the Arab people talk for a little bit about your country. Calm the fuck down, motherfuckers, okay? Jesus.
Of leading the people, of going for a just cause because the other side failed, until there is some collaboration or until there is some greater goal. But I just feel like we are very much distracting and looking past a very, very, very crucial point here, which is no matter how many people chose Hamas, no matter if they came there by force or if they came there by completely democratic reasons, isn't it true that it was from the very beginning the stated goal of Hamas to get rid of the Jewish population in the entirety of Palestine?
Sorry, someone pinged me. Yeah, I'd say that. I think there are a lot of members. Okay.
So yeah, so we know it's true because
Why
they
not
also
just say yes?
They even posted that they even had the hadiths from Muhammad, which Muslims believe in, which says that the last hour will not come until you fight the Jews and you kill all of them, and they will hide behind trees and rocks, and even the trees and rocks will say, "There's a Jew behind me, come and kill him." They had that in their declaration, and they still propagate the idea that they will take back all of the Palestinian regions, and there will be no Israel and there will be no Jews. So
haven't Hamas and the Palestinian Authority, haven't they been like aligned in the past though on some sorts of like resolutions for figuring out solutions forward? I understand that it's tempting to say like, well, how did these people start? But I feel like if we do like that type of historical analysis, then wouldn't every Palestinian say, oh, well, didn't the Jewish state literally just start as trying to steal land from Palestinians who had already been here for however many years? So literally the entire existence of Israel from the very outset has been an infringement on Palestinian rights. So I feel like that type of like historical analysis where the party comes from wouldn't be as relevant as what are their actions, you know, in modern day or even in a recent decade or two. Although, of course, Hamas is still, to this day, obviously we see today, is still violent towards Israelis, of course, and Jewish people.
I mean, they still say they want death to the Jews, so it hasn't changed.
Wait, you're responding, Destiny, you're responding to Apostate Prophet, right?
Yeah, or I mean, I just both of you, but I'm just saying, like, to say, like, oh, well, Hamas is not going to be happy until every Jew is dead, but, like, haven't Hamas been willing to make some agreements with Israel? That seems to be at ends with the idea that they're just here to genocide all Israeli citizens. Like, is it not the case that there could be some agreement reached where we could imagine a world where Hamas is satisfied and the more radical, I mean, I guess it's a Sunni Islamist organization, so maybe not, I'm not sure, or party, I guess.
I mean, their entire existence is based on fighting their opponents and getting rid of the Jews. So how much can you really trust that they will find some common ground? I mean, I could grant that maybe there's a possibility to find some peace in the future, but it is their stated goal that they want to get rid of the Jewish population.
Mm-hmm.
Can I introduce some contradictory evidence? Okay. Sure. So here's my thing, right? When I earlier said, it's for me, I think like, you know, when you're dealing with Hamas, you're dealing in like a potential Hamas takeover, which I just don't imagine happening, even with like whatever parts of Israel they're holding on to right now. Mm-hmm. But when you're dealing with Hamas, I feel like it's fine to like have like some level of concern over what their intent with like the Jewish population of Israel is, which is why I'm fine with people who kind of come to the conclusion that they're genocidal. I mean, just like from the manifestation of their actions, you can, you know, make that connection. But when it comes to, you know, like kind of Destiny's point, is it possible that there would be a kind of like a Hamas kind of like change in policy? I do think it's possible. There are factions within Hamas that either kind of like, for example, I know everybody kind of, there was an addendum which kind of pushed back against like the earlier charter, and like that's not like officially part of the charter, but it kind of represents a compromise between two factions within Hamas that want to take a much more like, you know, moderate-ish, you know, moderate is relative here, kind of position on that. And there's also in 2021 when they thought they were going to win, because that's kind of like how they build what happened in 2021 after the kind of conflict with Israel, they released kind of what their plan was for the future. And, you know, according to that plan, they weren't planning, you know, genocide, right? And here's the thing. It's, you know, when you're talking about how convincing this is, it depends on, you know, the people that it would potentially be affected by. You know, you have to decide if it convinces you or not. Right. Is your argument that they're not as extreme because they didn't put genocide on their to-do list?
Pretty much.
No. I'm trying to like, because Destiny brought up, you know, is there a possibility that they would, you know, I'm trying to give Destiny some like, you know, something to build off of on this.
I mean, I can give you the last Hamas charter, which was, I think, drafted in 2017, which seemed relatively moderate to the beginnings, where they clearly stated that the goal is to fight the Jews and kill them. But in 2017, I think they adopted this whole idea that they want to reach as a as a first step the 1967 borders and expand on that further, but with the stated end goal of liberating all of Palestine. And Palestine is then defined as the entire region that is currently Israel and Palestine. So they still have the stated goal to first expand and then take all of it over, although their charter does not explicitly include that they want to to wage a war on the entire Jewish population and get rid of them. But that is, I think, pretty much implied, and we have all seen today from the videos that the world has seen what they are capable of and what they don't shy away from.
Okay. Any final words from the people in here on this particular attack today, or Israel-Palestine, in regards to this issue? Apostate, you have anything else?
I think I just said everything I wanted to say.
Okay. Beast Process, anything from you?
Just concerning what's going to happen next, or
Sure, or anything you want to say about it, sure.
yeah, I want to say that I do not want to see, I think everybody's been talking about like Gaza getting like erased or something like that. I just don't want to see that happen. I just putting that out there. I think that's something, that's rhetoric we should be pushing against.
Yeah, most people probably agree with that. David, anything from anybody?
I think that's it.